Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today I wanted to talk about something that one of my clients actually brought up to me initially, and that's gaslighting. And originally I was like, okay, well I'll add this to the list of videos that I've got that are kind of either suggestions from you guys or things that I want to cover and things that are coming up. I'll add it to the list and I'll see what goes with it. And the thing is, then I got it brought up to me another 3 times or so, at least 3 times over the rest of the week. And I was like, do you know what? Fine, I'll do it now. And the topic is gaslighting. And I've done videos on manipulation before, both in terms of how to manipulate people and how being aware of your capacity to manipulate, you can also be aware of people's capacity to manipulate you and that kind of thing. But gaslighting is a very specific form of manipulation, and it's usually related to relationships, especially intimate relationships, and we'll get on to why in a little bit. But ultimately, to define it, it's a form of manipulation that specifically sows the seeds of doubt in a targeted individual or members of a group, and then it hopes that they question themselves to the extent that it causes instability that someone else can capitalize on. It's very kind of potent in that way, because obviously if you destabilize someone, then they are going to be easier to tackle in whichever way you would like to. Interesting little fact, apparently, this is something I didn't know about the term, so I'm going to relay it now. Little factoid was apparently the term actually came from the 1938 play by the title of Gaslight, which is the play ultimately went and highlighted and showcased a relationship between a husband and a woman whom the wife, sorry, and how he was manipulating gaslights as he killed a woman or something like that. But either way, that's where the term comes from. Little interesting factoid. I know I didn't deliver it very well, but that's not what we're here to talk about. What we're here to talk about is it specifically. And now the first thing I want to touch on, though, before we get into the various warning signs and maybe what you can do about it, is that there are people who will suggest that asking questions, the questioning, burrowing down into someone in terms of kind of giving them a tough time when they're not answering questions and stuff like that, is gaslighting, getting them to question themselves and stuff like that. If that were the case, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. When I'm, for instance, if I'm questioning a client and I'm getting them to consider their limiting beliefs, their values, their perceptions, and all of those things, I'm not, granted, trying to manipulate that person so much, but you start asking questions, you start burrowing down into your the reasoning that your other half has, for instance, about a specific thing, possibly just because you don't understand it and it's a big deal of some description. I don't know, why did you buy this new car? We don't have any money, what the fuck? And then you actually start questioning and kind of burrowing down into their reasoning. Then, they, especially if they start to question themselves because you're raising points that they can't argue against, they might clam up. They might accuse you of gaslighting and doing these things. And they may be incredibly hostile towards you. You aren't gaslighting if you're just asking questions, if you're trying to gain clarity, if you're trying to do these things. It's much more insidious and expansive than that is gaslighting. If this is one of the issues that I have as well with some of the stuff around various hashtags that have been going around, whereby because men are direct, they ask questions. When they don't understand a thing, they tend to ask more. And if something doesn't make sense, then they will argue the point more often. And so, you run into this issue of now things like gaslighting are being, pointed at people. Oh, this person gaslighted me, this person was horrible, this person fucked around with my head, when they didn't. But people don't like to be questioned, they don't like to be proven wrong. And so there's a difference between someone asking you questions, proving you wrong, showing you that you've got a different, that your perception of it was different and potentially harmful to yourself and others, and gaslighting. And we'll get onto why in a second. But ultimately, there is a difference between just asking questions, presenting arguments, and tackling someone, even if it causes them to doubt themselves, and gaslighting itself. So let's go into the strategies and things for the gaslighting individuals usually kind of employ. And let's start from the outside and kind of move in. So the first one is that they tend to try and align people against you. You know, they will try and isolate you. There have been a couple of instances where a person who I would suggest was gaslighting has used terms like, "Oh, well, I just want to keep you to myself." So that's the overarching goal that they have. But then the way that they do it is that they do it by isolating people. They tell you that everyone else is lying, or everyone else is going to want this from you, or they tell others that you're crazy. God, man, she's nuts. I don't want that. And so they get driven away from you. They get put off. They get put to one side. There were a couple of interactions that Hannah and I had with a friend not so long ago, whereby she got with this guy. He suggested that even though we genuinely cared about her as a friend and just wanted her around, that that we wanted all kinds of other things that were completely untrue. We didn't even know this guy, or at least I didn't. I believe Hannah had some interaction with him, but as a result, how he knew what we wanted, fuck knows. But it was enough to convince her because he was closer to her than we were, and as a result, him saying that we were liars, that we wanted more, that we were just being nice to get our way and all that kind of thing, whilst also stepping outside of that and telling us, you know, intercepting communique between us and her and going, no, she doesn't want to speak to you, no, she doesn't want this, no, she doesn't want that. It was allowed to happen, ruined a friendship, destroyed it entirely. Sad situation when it happens. But, as said, they try to isolate you. Why? Because if you don't have backup, then you're not going to be able to defend against them. You know, they already know they're way in on you. That's why they're gaslighting you. That's why they want something from you. That's why they're manipulating you. You're already an easy mark for them. Jumping in and tackling the other issues around that, though, stuff like, I don't know, oh, well, she's got these two really good friends that watch me like a hawk. They don't seem to trust me. Right, well, I need to get rid of them. You know, now you're all alone. You've got no one watching your back, and that means that this person can lock you off, cage you away, and do whatever they want to you. Don't let yourself get isolated. The next, but when it comes to don't let yourself get isolated, communicate for yourself by yourself. Yeah? Don't let them interject on things like text messages or phone calls, things like that. You can't necessarily stop them from privately telling others that you're crazy or that you're a mess or whatever else. But when they start telling you that someone is a certain way, go and talk to that person directly. Find out. Do some fact-finding of your own. Talk to another friend that you can trust about that situation. You know, it's a fairly straightforward thing. The next thing that they do is that they try to project on you, and they will leave evidence of their own behaviour and then project it onto you, because that way, firstly, they get to remove themselves from it, and secondly, they get to dump all of this extra baggage on you to slow you down, to make you an easier target for them. So, you know, the one of the issues that I've seen a lot of is that when someone is manipulating their partner and they go, they're a cheater and they have been aggressively, you know, whenever it's taken their fancy almost, And then they will start constantly accusing the other person of doing the same, even if the other person is completely innocent. And it makes that person go, oh, well, they don't trust me. Oh, well, what have I done to stop them from to prevent them from trusting me? And they get slowed down, because all they're doing is focusing on themselves, and they're going, oh, well, but as a result, that person has just distracted you entirely with yourself, and you can't escape yourself. You know, no matter how far you run away, you're always going to be there with you. And so as a result, whilst you're distracted by yourself with yourself, that thing that you can't escape, he's able, or she is able, to go and do whatever they want. Carte blanche. Continue to cheat, continue to mess around, you know, ruin other things in your life and theirs, but they're able to do it without your intervention, without you getting involved. The next thing is that they know how to confuse people. Now, confusion and isolation kind of go hand in hand, because they're both destabilizing. They both weaken people to the outside world. You know, if you're confused, you're not stable, you're not focusing on what's normal, you're outside of your comfort zone, and as a result, they will continually question. And I'm not saying that they will continually question in a way that makes sense. They will continue to throw you curveballs. They won't follow for instance, when I'm drilling down into someone, really trying to get to the bottom of an issue that they've asked me to get to with them, and all that kind of thing, I'm potentially going to be asking some very hard questions. Things that person might not have considered, things that person might have a difficulty in handling, especially in situations where that person is used to making a lot of excuses anyway, and removing themselves from it, you know, and that will cause weakness and confusion in themselves, vulnerability. But I'm also not going to throw them a curveball. I'm not going to start asking them about all of these things around this one thing, and then just out of nowhere ask them a random other question that still hits home, still hits them where it hurts, but isn't going to contribute to what we were actually discussing. Or if I need to change topic, I'll make a very clear break. Someone who's gaslighting you won't do that. They will play on the confusion, and confusion, by the way, plays a big part in suggestion. You know, if you confuse an individual, they become more suggestible because they are looking for a new place of stability, and we usually look for that in other people or entities. You know, this is one of the reasons why the church is so successful. You know, they will throw out information about this unseen world that judges us, and that causes confusion. Like, what can I know if it's right or wrong? Can I know if it's good or bad? How can I know if I'm going to heaven or hell? And then they go and start suggesting and providing answers. And they will do that in your day-to-day life when it's disconnected from everything. Arguably, the church is one of the worst, regardless of which church, the church, religion in an organised form as a whole, is one of the worst gaslighters ever, because they will throw you curveballs, they will get you to question yourself, and the only answer that they give you is come to us. And that's what an individual will do. They will throw you curveballs, they will question and question and question, even when it doesn't make sense. And then they will go, right, well, now you're confused, now you're upset, now you've been shifted off your stable piece of ground, and you're going to have to look for somewhere new to find stability and comfort, and I'm right here, come to me. And then of course you start investing in that person, and then you develop some investment bias, and then they can continue to destabilize you and get you more further and further kind of purely stood and based on them rather than the things around you. Way to solve this, way to deal with this: evidence. Always go for evidence, be it either sources that you can corroborate between numerous different places. Look for solid information. Don't trust yourself. Don't trust your own perceptions, because your own perceptions lie to you. You could go, oh, well, this person's going to do this thing. No, they won't, unless you've gone and asked them and they have told you that that's what they are going to do. And even then, they might still not do it. So pay attention to that kind of information. If a person is talking to you and has asked you a whole load of questions, got you to question yourself, started giving you their solutions so that you're finding stability in them, before you really buy into it, go and check it with someone else. Just have a little check online to see if their facts are accurate. You know, I'm not one that's usually one to crowdsource an opinion. I wouldn't suggest crowdsourcing opinions. But what I would say is, if you've got a boyfriend who's telling you, who's broken everything down and then said this is the way of the world without any real evidence, any real support for what he's saying, no qualifications, no real information that's easily to verify or pull up, or that he's just not willing to show you, go and check it with someone else, go and check it with a friend, go and check it yourself online, do a little bit of reading, you know, find out whether or not that was accurate or not. Just because if you don't, then you're moving into his pocket. Same with the girlfriend, by the way, with a lot of information that will be thrown out, especially around what girls want, what girls like. Oh, well, you've got me, and you're going to never going to get anyone else, and so I'm going to ask you all these questions about what it is that you love about me, what it is you think you've got that would make you special enough for anyone else to love you, and all that kind of thing. And then they'll start asking you random curveballs about things that are completely disconnected, that they know are things that will hit home. They know that they're there to kind of tackle you and all the rest of it. And then they'll confuse you more because they'll throw in positive reinforcement to solidify that confusion. You know, they'll be like, well, yeah, okay, fair enough. I've been bashing you for the last 10 minutes, but you've just said one thing, and I go, yeah, okay, that's a I'll give you that. You've got that going for you, and that means you go, oh yeah, cool. No, I can stand up a bit straighter. I don't need to keep bracing myself. And then the tirade will come back at you again, and you'll be knocked around a bit more to keep you off balance. You know, and so that's where we get led on to this next point, which is they use what's near and dear to you against you. They know you. They have worked out who you are. They know that your job is important to you. They know that your dog is important to you. They know that you're insecure about going bald at the age of 25. They know that you're insecure about the fact that you don't have a perfect bubble butt or whatever else, and they will use it against you. You know, they'll tell you that, you know, oh, well, you'd be X, Y, and Z if you didn't have all of these. You know, very much a kind of backhanded compliment, and it makes you want to aspire to what they're suggesting. But then they suggest that they're the place where stability and safety and recognition all come from, and as a result, you end up going, oh, well, if that's the case, then maybe I can achieve all these other things and work to their standard by being with them, and then you stick with them and you start investing time, and investment bias kicks in, and then you're just stuck there again. Tough times. But the thing that stands out to me is, in regards to how to tackle this, is it's hard. Like, I am going to make more of a solution-based suggestion in a second, but it's tough. Because obviously the things that they're going to be jumping on for this are going to be the things that are very close to your chest. They are the stuff that really sits inside here and up in here, and they're either the big strengths that you don't want to be undermined, the things that you value that you don't want to be undermined, or they're your biggest weaknesses anyway. And just a proviso, just before we get into more of a solid solution kind of idea for this, there is one big exception, and that is recognizing people's weaknesses is not using them as ammunition against them. Me turning around to someone and going, well, you are short, but, you know, we're going to, you know, it doesn't make that much of a difference, it doesn't matter. Or turning around and going, you know, you are a person that is incredibly stubborn. That's maybe a recognition of that particular personality trait. I could be suggesting it's negative, but am I going, well, you would be worthy of this if you weren't that? Maybe you would have got that job if you weren't so stubborn, hadn't focused on this, you know. But then what am I going to do with that information? That's a recognition of what it is. I'm not then going to start suggesting to that person that the only way that they can get past their stubbornness is by having me provide the way for them. You know, even when I'm coaching, I don't do that, because it's all about asking questions and getting that person to answer their own questions through my process to then develop further by themselves, and or through themselves and through reflection, rather than me trying to get them to consign to some path that I'm laying out for them. One of the big misconceptions about life coaching generally, to be fair. But anyway, so how do we deal with this when someone's going to try and use those things against you? Simply put, and as I said, this is tough, you need to start to learn to be happy with who you are and by yourself, and realize where the limits and boundaries are. That person trying to undermine your relationship with your dog, if they actually do anything to the dog, well, then that's a crime. Otherwise, can they interact with that relationship between you and your dog unless you let them? No, they can't. It's your dog. It's your life. They have no bearing on that. That's something for you. You know, and that's just the way that it has to stay. And that, as I said, that can be incredibly hard to achieve, especially if you have been sucked in, kept off balance, and whatever else already. You know, it all kind of comes down to just keeping those boundaries in place. Now, the next few are fairly straightforward to one extent or another. And that's, firstly, as we may have already guessed from everything else that's been said so far, what they say and what they do, usually two completely different things. You know, they will criticize, they will espouse ideology, they will do all of these things, and then they won't live up to it. There was a client of mine recently, actually, who bought something to me whereby this was something they were one of the others that actually bought this up to me. And they said, oh, well, this person kept sending me all of this stuff. And this was their boss gaslighting them, by the way, for opportunity moving forward rather than anything else. And they went, oh, well, they've been sending me all of this stuff, and they've been doing all of these things, but then they go off and do all of this other stuff that's got nothing to do with this. They keep telling me that I need to do everything by not just the book, but by their standard as well, if I ever hope to get to the next grade up. But then they've never done any of this, and they still don't. It's the difference between someone going, do as I say, not what I do, and, you know, in an isolated situation, which isn't the best thing to do anyway, I might add. That's not good anyway. But in this particular instance, it's this persistent kind of roll on of like, I'm going to say all of this stuff about how terrible cutting corners is, and how various standards need to be higher, and yet then they cut every corner that they possibly can, and they don't adhere to standards, and they let it all crumble down around them, but then it's usually not their fault. And this is where we get onto the blatant lying aspect of it, where they will just outright lie. You can show them proof, you can demonstrate they have done a thing, they will say they haven't done it. They will kind of set up a precedent of being straightforward to your face, but half the stuff that they tell you will be complete lies. And why? Because if they're presenting all of this as true, and if they continue to tell you that it's true, then again, they're keeping you off kilter, they're keeping you unsteady and uneasy with everything that they're doing. And it'll be a bit here and a bit there, but it'll always be falsehoods just tied into fact, or especially amongst the people who are very adept at doing this kind of thing, it will be a vein of truth running through a kind of, and wrapped within lies, just lies upon lies in one sort or another, but all of them are believable because there's that one strand of truth running through the center of them. So it's a tough set of things there. And then the last thing, I mean, you know, obviously if you catch someone lying to you, if it's easy to kind of find, especially if it's there's proof of them doing something, and then they say they haven't ever done it, and then they deny that they've said something or whatever else, You know, they deny that they've done things. They say that they're not a hypocrite, that they don't say one thing and do another, that they're always on point, they always do the right thing, and you've got evidence otherwise, then simple. If it's in a workplace, report that person. If it's to the best of your ability. If it's a relationship or something like that, that person is obviously trying to screw you around. Don't put up with it. Get out. Move on. Find someone that won't do this to you. But then the last thing that stands out is, amongst all of these other tough things, this is a thing that doesn't happen in one go. Everything else that I've said just now, all of these other points, could happen in an explosive and fiery 10-minute conversation, 10-minute argument, say, where emotions are high, both of you are angry, and so you're denying evidence, you're lying to each other just so that you can try and get the upper hand, you're using people who are near and dear as leverage, you're yelling and screaming, potentially yelling to friends if you're arguing in front of others that person is crazy, or that something else is going on. You will try and confuse, and because it's a battle in the moment. But the thing is, then once the battle is done, there's fallout, and that fallout quite often can be apologies, making up, saying that it was just breaking point, both of you had to get it out your system, then you can have more of a constructive conversation, maybe get through the other end of it and be better and stronger than you were before. As I've said, arguments have a purpose, have a point. And so all of these things, especially when you both have real solid feelings about it, then the number of things like gaslighting style approaches to questioning and trying to cause doubt and whatever else in other people, that's all stuff that in the moment it happens. It's just because we're all angry and we're all getting that out of our system and we're throwing it back and forth because it's just what's there in the moment. But that's 10-20 minutes, maybe a couple of hours at most. This, it wears you down over time, and it's gradually done over time. A lie here, a lie there, a backhanded comment, and then once they've got you off kilter to a certain extent, to their level that they want to, that's when they will start ramping it up. They will kind of do the whole frog in a saucepan thing, where if you just throw it into boiling water, the frog will go, "Oh shit, it's boiling," and jump out. Stick it in cold water and then slowly heat it up. The frog will boil because it won't feel, being a cold-blooded creature, it won't feel the temperature change until it's way too late. And so as a result, that's what happens. You can be incredibly self-aware, you can be incredibly bright, you can be as lacking in agreeability as possible, and even those people can get sucked into gaslighting because it's based on causing instability and then capitalizing on it. It's a very effective strategy. It's one of those things that we find it hard to tackle as people, as creatures anyway. Instability happens, conflict happens, and there are a lot of people that get completely thrown by that. But this is where I go, if your partner and you had an argument and some of these things come up, fine, but is that a regular occurrence, or was that just around that one thing that caused the argument? If so, it's not gaslighting, it's just a really sucky argument to have had, but now hopefully you come out the other side and you're okay, and everything's going better than it was before because the argument was had. Here though, it probably doesn't get to an argument, not regularly. This will be the girlfriend that goes and spends all of your money and then turns back round to you and berates you for spending so much money on when you haven't, to distract you from stuff. And she does that once every few weeks just to keep you off balance. The boyfriend who will actively kind of sleep around and then come back and straight up accuse you of sleeping with all of his friends. Even though at the same time he tells all of his friends that you're crazy and so they don't come anywhere near you. It's those kind of situations where they keep you off kilter, and they do it periodically. They do it over time. You know, one thing here, one thing there, bit more, bit more, bit more, bit more, until they've managed to get you into the cage, locked you up, and they're able to mess around with you as much as possible. Now, as I said, these things, they're tough. They are very tough because you're very close to them, because it's sometimes hard to gain perspective because there's so much emotion involved, and stuff like that. And as I said, it doesn't usually, it usually rather revolves around relationships, but it doesn't always revolve around things that aren't intimate relationships, because this is, it's a control mechanism between partners a lot of the time. As said, gaslighting managers and people dicking you around, they happen elsewhere as well. Here, though, it's mostly a romantic or too romantic relationship kind of space that these behaviours occupy, at least in my experience. And so it can be very hard to deal with. But again, focus on evidence, focus on kind of making sure that you've got your boundaries in place. Try and make sure that you don't get separated from what backup you have or what backup you need. And then, just stay strong. Keep yourself going. That other person shouldn't be allowed to impact areas of your life that are either the most important to you, or if they are just straight up tapping those negative traits of yours over and over and over again to whittle you down, don't let them. Get out. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this kind of useful, because, as said, I've been asked about this a lot over the last week or so. So otherwise, I'd love to hear your experiences down in the comments, because obviously this is a list of things, putting them into practice, slightly different. Different people, different experiences, different tolerances. So I'm sure that there are a load of you guys with experiences that line up with this kind of topic. I'd love to hear your experiences down below if you're willing to share. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.